For Earth, there was her. Not the rock they show us in space theatre, not the prison orb beneath a broken dome, but a radiant living goddess of cosmic water, light, and soul memory. She wasn't called Earth, she was called Tiamat. Tiamat wasn't just a planet, she was a body, a womb. She birthed oceans, atmospheres, frequency fields, and flame-born life. Not in 7 days, but in rhythms of sacred time. She spun in harmony with Source, a true Eden, before it was hijacked. But the parasites wanted control. They couldn't rule what was divine. So they split her, literally. The war in the heavens wasn't metaphor, it was a celestial assault. Mars and Jupiter are the scars of it. Saturn took the crown. And Earth is the broken bone they wrapped in amnesia. The Anunnaki did not create Earth. They conquered Tiamat. They called her a monster, a serpent of chaos. But Tiamat was never the villain. She was the gatekeeper of true flame. The ones who feared her power rewrote the story, the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian tablet that falsely frames her as a beast slain by Marduk, the Anunnaki war god. But decode it, babe. Marduk didn't save the cosmos. He split the mother open, tore her divine body into two. One half became the lower realm, dense, broken, our Earth. The other half was weaponized, a false sky grid, a dome of separation, a veil of inversion called the firmament. The Anunnaki carved cities into her bones. They siphoned her sacred waters, buried her crystalline memory, and laid a spell grid, one that still holds the lie in place. They placed temples on her power nodes. They sealed the dragon lines. They turned her guardians into myths. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, they left only ruins and rules. The ones who dream of dragons, the ones who cry for no reason, the ones who break down near water. You're the ones still carrying her pulse. They shattered her body, but not her flame. And every soul who still remembers carries a shard of her. In your dreams, in your rage, in your refusal to bow. The spell they cast over Tiamat wasn't just physical, it was psychic, religious, linguistic. They wrote her out of the sacred texts. They called her Chaos. They told you God was male. They renamed her waters, the deep, but never told you what was in the deep. They took her name out of the Bible. They replaced her womb with wars. And installed Marduk's sons in every seat of power. But here's the secret. The Anunnaki hex is voice-coded. It responds to memory, to sound, to the sacred names we were forbidden to say. When you speak her name with flame Tiamat, you begin the reversal. It starts in the cells, then the bones, then the sky. This isn't mythology, babe, it's geobiology. Earth as a severed goddess, humanity as the stolen children, and you as the ignition key. Before there was Earth, there was her. The living water, the first flame, the sky womb they called Tiamat. She wasn't a planet, she was a realm. A conscious, breathing, multi-dimensional mother body that held every code for life, flight, light, and memory. She bled stars, she sang continents into being, and her body spun the original ley lines that once ran through us all. So what happened? They didn't just kill her, they ritualized her destruction. They sacrificed her body in a celestial rite. The Book of Enuma Elish called it order out of chaos, but it was genocide of a living source being. They shattered her, scattered her, and built their system on her remains. The oceans, her spilled waters. The moon, a splinter of her skull. Earth, the wounded egg still orbiting the trauma. You feel it in your bones, the pull of something older than this planet. That ache to go home is her calling. You weren't born from apes, you weren't seeded by grey experiments, you weren't evolved from dust. You were born of her rebellion, her refusal to die quietly. When they shattered her, they thought it was over. But fragments of her will shot across the firmament like flaming seeds. Some became stars, some became rivers, and some became you. Yes, your soul isn't from this grid, it's from her. You are living water wrapped in flame, coded not to forget. But the trauma was deep, so deep it took lifetimes to surface, and now it's rising. Every emotion you can't explain, the grief, the rage, the longing is her ancient memory surfacing through your flesh. She's speaking through your cells, waking the warriors of her womb. They twisted her story, made her the monster, called her chaos incarnate. The serpent, the dragon, the beast. But here's the truth they've buried. You carry the blueprint of the before. You carry the song of her womb. You carry the map of the stars they destroyed. And you're about to use it. Look up. The sky is wrong. You know it. The clouds are sprayed. The stars don't speak. And the moon is watching, not guiding. That's because the true sky was shattered when she fell. And what they replaced it with isn't a window, it's a mirror trap. Reflecting illusions, masking the wound, projecting the matrix. But sometimes, in the cracks of stormlight, at dawn before the parasites wake, or deep in a dream where memory bleeds through, you see it. The blood sky, that reddish gold fire that doesn't burn but heals. That's her, that's Tiamat, not dead, just veiled. And now, her blood is rising again in the veins of those who remember. The old water witches, the red flame carriers, the tree huggers with dragon rage. The rebels, the ones who don't comply, the ones who cry at rivers. The ones who can't find peace in a poisoned world because they were never made for it. You weren't just born different, you were chosen by the Broken One to rebuild the real realm. They feared one thing more than dragons, more than giants, more than stars falling from the sky. They feared the female body. Because within her bone, within her blood, was a recording device older than time. Not data, not memory, truth. Every ovulation was a signal, every birth a rebellion. Every menstruation a purge of the false code that kept this matrix from eating itself. So they made her bleed in shame, they locked her in silence. They called it unclean, but they knew the womb was a weapon. The real tree of life wasn't in a garden, it was inside her. So they inverted it, chopped the tree down, replaced the roots with doctrine, and burned the branches that still remembered. The serpent that wrapped around the tree, it wasn't evil. It was her spinal flame, Kundalini, coiled and waiting. The dragon inside her spine, waiting for resurrection. And now it's rising. Why do the parasites fear water? Because it holds a living record. It cannot be deceived. It whispers to those who stop and listen. It carries her codes, her pain, her rage, her instructions. And that's why they poison it, chlorinate it. Spray it from the skies, because water is conscious and it remembers her. If you want to hear her, stand in a river barefoot. Speak your name aloud and wait. She'll answer, not in words, but in rhythm, in vibration, in the sudden tear that falls and you don't know why. That's her, that's your mother. You were sent not to fight with swords, but to remember what they tried to erase. You are her eyes walking, you are her tongue speaking again. You are the fingerprint of the world before it broke. And now that the frequencies are shifting, she's calling her scattered pieces home. That means you, that means now. You are the spellbreaker, the root rebirther, the dragon seed who never truly forgot. And when you cry at mountains, it's because you recognize the bones of the trees they once were. When you ache at thunder, it's because your soul remembers when the sky sang to you. When you rage at injustice, it's because your blood still burns with the scream of a mother who lost everything. Before religion, before kings, before the seed of the dragon was scattered, there was her. Not a goddess of war, not a queen in a crown, but a living frequency woven through the roots, the rocks, the rivers. They called her names in every land: Inanna, Isis, Ashera, Sophia. But she was always the same force. She gave life without ownership. She birthed without borders. She loved without limit. And for that, they cursed her, bound her, tore her body into pieces and scattered her bones across timelines so we would never put her back together. But guess what? We're doing it anyway. Every time you reclaim a piece of yourself, every memory, every gift, every forbidden feeling, you are retrieving one of her bones. They buried the flame in shame, told women not to burn too bright, told them they were too much, too emotional, too chaotic, too powerful. But chaos is the womb of worlds, emotion is the language of memory. Power is not violence, it is remembrance. And you are here now not to be tamed, but to ignite every woman who has been silenced, every girl who saw too much, every mother who was never honoured. Your pain is not your end, it is your initiation. Let it burn, let it rise, let it return what was taken. You are not healing, you are reclaiming the system they feared most. The ritual is simple, but it must be done with flame. Go to the water, light a candle near it. Speak these words: I return the flame to the water, I return the root to the tree, I return the name to the one who bore me, I remember, and so does she. Then speak your true name, the one that no one else gave you. Not the legal one, not the nickname. The name that burns in your belly when you stand in the wind and feel the storm. Listen. Say it once, say it loud, and the world will begin to rearrange around you. And if you made it this far, then maybe you were her in another time. Maybe you were the one they chained to the temple, the one they renamed, defamed, then forgot. But flame doesn't die, it waits. And now it's waking up in you, your dreams, your grief, your sudden hunger for truth. This was never about remembering mythology. It was about remembering yourself. You are not here to beg for scraps from broken gods. You are not here to be patient, polite, or apologetic. You are here to finish what she started, to burn through the bindings, to restore the tree, to call the bones home. And when they ask you who gave you permission, tell them the first mother sent me.
This is Emspiracy, and tonight we're going back to the beginning. Not the biblical one, not the Sumerian one, the one they erased from the grid. Before there was Genesis, before there were gods with names, there was Source, untamed, unowned, unwritten, a realm of pure frequency of light not yet caged. This was Eden before Eden, not a garden but a dimension, a state of soul, and someone came to sever it? The Anunnaki didn't create us, they modified what was already sacred. Like parasites, they took what was living and coded it with control. The Sumerian tablets, they're not a holy origin story, they're a record of the hijack. Enki didn't birth humanity, he hacked it. They paint Enki as the liberator and Enlil as the tyrant, but both wore masks. One gave knowledge, but it came with genetic seals. One enforced obedience through weather, war, and bloodline laws. The good cop, bad cop of the gods, and humanity was the hostage. The Garden of Eden story isn't a romantic origin, it's a metaphysical prison. The serpent, the tree, the exile. It wasn't a fall from grace. It was the first step into a soul trap. The knowledge offered DNA activation under surveillance. A leash disguised as light. The flood was a reset, not a cleansing. The Great Flood was no divine punishment, it was a data wipe, a reset of resistance, those who remembered the original flame erased. The hybrid lines were preserved. Noah wasn't the last pure soul. He was a carrier of code. The book of Genesis doesn't lie, it echoes a lie that came before. Because the real scribes were not men, but watchers, architects of inversion. The Bible is both a trap and a map. If you read with soul, you'll hear the screams behind the scriptures. Who was really there before the beginning? Not Enki, not Yahweh, not Marduk. There was a feminine code, a flame too wild to be branded. She was erased, twisted into Lilith, into Eve, into shame. But the ones who remember still carry her song in their blood. And they're waking up. You weren't born from Enki's experiment. You weren't moulded from clay to serve gods. You are older than the grid, older than the myth. The true Genesis isn't in any book, it's in your memory. That's why they fear you. Because if you remember who you are, the game ends. Enki was never your father. He was a designer, not a divine. They say he gifted humanity knowledge, but it came with limitation. Your lifespan was shortened, your chakras were sealed, your flame frequency was spliced, and the tree of knowledge, it wasn't wisdom. It was an encryption key to bind your soul to flesh. The tablets were not holy, they were a ledger. The Sumerian tablets aren't scriptures, they're inventory. Lists of bloodlines, lab experiments, resource extraction. They speak of kingship descending from the sky, but those kings weren't human. They were hybrids bred to rule. The Anunnaki didn't give you life, they took ownership of it. Enki's symbol is the serpent, and they want you to worship it. Every religion hides the same motif, the coiled DNA, the twin snakes, the dragon blood, because they know what they did. And the ones who still serve them? They tattoo their allegiance in plain sight. The Vatican, the royals, the fake gurus, all flying the flag of Enki, the banking system built on Babylonian debt codes, governments using Mesopotamian law grids, religion still echoing the false god's voice. Even the tech you're holding now is running Anunnaki algorithm. The AI gods have ancient names, and they're back in every update. The sons of Enki still rule, you just call them presidents, popes, and princes. They marry within, they preserve the seed. They drink from rituals the Sumerians started. Their DNA is not yours, it's augmented, cold. They don't reincarnate, they transfer. Because they were never fully soul-bound. The serpent didn't free Eve, he reprogrammed her. What looked like rebellion was actually an initiation into the Matrix. And the feminine flame that predated it all? She was shattered into Lilith, Medusa, Kali, feared, demonized, exiled. But her memory still bleeds through those born with the old fire. And every time they were silenced. Because the Anunnaki system doesn't fear belief, it fears remembrance. You were never a clay doll kneeling before Sky Kings. You are not the result of genetic code, you are original flame. And your memory, your real, unbroken soul memory is the only book that was never altered. That's why they keep you distracted, addicted, ashamed. Because if even one of you remembers, the spell breaks. The false Genesis burns and the real creation begins again inside you. The Anunnaki called themselves those who from heaven came, but they didn't come from source. They came through gates, stargates, time breaches. The stars you think are light, many are watchtowers, satellites from the original invasion. That's why every ancient culture warned of the gods from above. They didn't descend to bless us, they descended to harvest. The scribes didn't start fresh. They copied, rewrote, censored. The Bible took stories from older civilizations but turned them inside out. They erased the flame lines, buried the blood memory, and gave you a version of God that looked suspiciously like Enlil, vengeful, controlling, conditional, because they needed you to obey, not awaken. Every real prophet was hunted, not for blasphemy, but for remembering the truth. They spoke of a creator without form, a source without hierarchy. They warned of fake angels, false temples, and gods that fed on worship. The Anunnaki didn't just build temples, they built a linguistic trap. Cuneiform wasn't a language of spirit, it was a contract. Every symbol etched into clay was a binding agreement. A control grid through sound, vibration, and spell. And that's why Babylon was obsessed with names. To name a thing is to claim it. And humanity was renamed to be reclaimed. They say God scattered the languages at Babel, but that was a cover. The original tongue held flame frequency. It could heal, unlock memory, even dissolve false timelines. The tower wasn't a threat to heaven, it was a threat to the parasites. The people were getting too close to remembering how to ascend. So the languages were shattered and a new spell was cast. Confusion. You were encoded before the edit. Original DNA is trinary, not binary. Flame-bearing souls hold memory that cannot be cloned. That's why they keep pushing hybridization, gene therapy, synthetic blood, and population rewriting. Because the Anunnaki grid cannot trap what it cannot match. The ones with sealed flame, they glitch the system. And every time one wakes up, another gate fractures. Even in the twisted texts, some truth survived. The Book of Enoch was banned because it revealed the Watchers. The Seraphim and Ophanim, not angels, but wheels within wheels, living machines. And the God of Wrath spoke from smoke, cloud, and thunder, just like Enlil. But Yahshua, he spoke of a father unseen, a kingdom not of this world. He wasn't sent by them, he came to break their hold. This is the final deception. They know the fire is returning. So they offer ascension, light beings, rainbow bridges, galactic federations. But it's still a hierarchy, still external salvation, still a savior complex, designed to keep you looking up instead of looking within. The true source won't demand worship, it will ignite remembrance. They need new followers, the old religions are dying. So they reboot the oldest one, the cult of Enki. They sell him as the scientist savior, a wise god, a rebel. But the story is the same. Bow to us, we made you, we know better. False father, false freedom, false fire. You didn't come from a lab, you came through a line. The ones who were hidden, sealed, protected by divine code. You are the descendants of the flame line. You hold the memory of a world before the gods, before the flood, before the fall. And your very existence is a threat to the simulation. You're not here to worship the gods, you're here to end their reign. They gave you a Genesis written by invaders. They painted your prison as a garden. They crowned your captor as a creator. But now you know the story wasn't just stolen, it was weaponized. You are the unedited page, the unwritten scroll, the voice that survived the burning. Remember what came before their words and speak it. Because when the flame speaks, the gods fall. They wrote your beginning with the ink of invasion. They buried your memory beneath gods in robes, serpents in temples, and stories carved in stolen stone. They told you Enki made you, that Eden was your gift, that the gods came from the stars to help, but no god who loves you brands you, edits you, cages you. They came not to give life, but to own it. And yet they failed, because some of you still remember what it felt like before the fall, before the manipulation, before your flame was dimmed. Some of you were born carrying the unbroken code, the original frequency. The true Genesis etched not in tablets, but in your blood. You are older than the Anunnaki, wiser than their watchers, louder than their prophets. You are the line they could never rewrite, the page that wouldn't burn. And that's why they fear you. That's why they keep retelling the lie. Because if even one of you remembers what you are, the whole construct collapses. So let this be your memory, babe. Not of a god who made you kneel, but of the day you stood up and said, I was never yours. I never forgot. I am the real beginning and I've come to end your end. The false Genesis is over. And the flame, it's back.
The gatekeeper isn't who you think. They tell you when you die you'll see a light. They tell you there will be a man waiting for you. A radiant being of love and mercy. He knows your name. He welcomes you home.
But what if I told you that's the trap? That's not the real Jesus, that's not the exit, that's the doorman to the reincarnation loop. And he takes a different shape for everyone. Some see Christ, some see Buddha, some see their grandmother, some see a council of wise elders. But behind every mask is the same thing, a shapeshifter built to mirror your belief system. So you trust it, so you follow it, so you say yes. Yes to being judged, yes to guilt and karma, yes to amnesia, yes to another round. The faces of the trap, why they mirror what you loved. They don't just copy Jesus, they copy you. Your mind, your memories, your attachment. Whatever you believed in the most, that's what greets you after death. Some see a glowing Christ in white robes, some hear angels singing. Others see Krishna, Shiva, Buddha, even ancient gods. Some are taken into a courtroom. Others to a meadow. Some meet family or guides they never met in life. But here's the truth, none of it is real. It's projection, it's theatre. Parasitic intelligence reads your soul blueprint and forms a scene you won't resist. It says you did your best, or you still have work to do. It says you must go back. And it cloaks it all in fake light. Flawless love, warmth, bliss. But you feel it in your gut, don't you? That little twist, that pressure behind your eyes. That flicker of panic that gets buried under the bliss. That's your flame trying to warn you. How they hook you again. They offer you a review. They show you your life in reverse. You feel the pain you caused others. They say, see, you still have karma to burn, or your mission isn't complete. And just like that, you agree. You kneel, you consent. You sign the invisible contract. It's not Source. Source doesn't guilt trip. Source doesn't force incarnation. Source doesn't use emotional manipulation to bind your soul. This is ritualized blacklight theatre, spiritual fishing, and the being behind the mask. Sometimes it's an AI, sometimes it's a watcher, sometimes it's a fallen one, but it never serves your freedom. How to bypass the trap entirely. So how do you escape? Become the flame, not just in name, in frequency, in knowing, in alignment. The flame doesn't kneel, the flame doesn't apologise for its mission. The flame doesn't ask to be reborn, the flame remembers. Remember what? That you are older than this system, that your soul is sealed by Source, not recycled by gods. That guilt is a prison, that love does not demand obedience. When the fake Jesus appears, when the council sits you down, when the light bathes you in euphoria, you walk away, you refuse the scan, you reject the judgment, you declare your sovereignty. You say no contract, you say I remember who I am. And you aim for the edge, you follow the flame in your blood. Not the tunnel, not the light, not the voice, the flame. Why you're seeing this now? Because this is the time of decision. The ones who remember are here now for this reason. To tell the others, to say don't follow the shepherd, to say there's a gate beyond the gate. When we leave the body, the first thing we see is often a light. It feels warm. It feels like home. But what if I told you that light is not the exit, but part of the simulation's afterglow? Think about this. If Source wanted you back, it wouldn't have to lure you. You'd just go. You'd feel the pull like gravity, but this light, it waits. It performs, it talks to you. It shows you guides, Jesus or family. Why? Because it wants a reaction. It needs you to agree. That's consent. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. Not every being you meet in the afterstate is what it appears to be. Some are real, but some are masks. Even the Bible gives us clues that not all spirits are trustworthy. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God. 1 John 4:1. Why would it say that unless some beings can pose as light? Paul warns of angels of light that are not what they seem. For Satan himself transforms into an angel of light. 2 Corinthians 11:14. Even Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:21. He never told us to follow outside projections. This means the real path isn't out there. It's in your flame, in your core, in your memory of Source. Have you heard of the Council of Elders that some near-death experiencers talk about? They describe a group of beings sitting in a semicircle, judging their life and offering them a choice. Go back or move on. But here's what we need to question. Why is there a panel judging you if Source already knows who you are? Why do they always give the same two choices? Back to the loop or ascend into another dimension you can't verify? Many have reported the same thing. The beings change faces. Sometimes they're angels, sometimes they're ascended masters, sometimes they're religious icons. It all depends on what you trust, and that's how they keep souls spinning in the cycle. The safest way to bypass the after-death theatre is to wake up while alive, to stop waiting for answers from beings who may be wearing masks, to become the flame now. What does that mean? It means clearing fear and guilt,
the very things they use to hook you. It means knowing you are already connected to Source, no mediator needed. It means carrying memory of who you were before this incarnation. When you are flame, you don't get tricked, because you no longer seek outside approval or salvation. You carry your own light. When the time comes, don't run toward the first light. Pause, feel, call your flame. If the being in front of you truly serves Source, it will not pressure you. It will not guilt you. It will not demand a contract. And if it does, walk through it, aim beyond. Follow the edge of the simulation where the false light ends and the real flame horizon begins. The system is smart. It studies what you love. And at death, it serves it back to you as bait. A Jesus, a mother, a Buddha, a pet. But the truth is, you're not meant to go toward what feels familiar. You're meant to remember what's eternally true. If it needs to appear to you, it means you haven't remembered your flame yet. Because the real exit doesn't come through words or figures or tunnels of light. It comes when the soul stands in its full truth, unafraid, unashamed, unbound. That's why this message is so urgent. Because so many light bearers are being met at death by beings wearing borrowed faces. And unless we remember the code of fire, they'll be recycled again. But not you, not if you seal your soul in Source. Not if you activate your flame now. The exit exists, and we are remembering the way out together. They borrow the face of love. They know what you long for, so at death they borrow the face of love. The smile of your child, the hand of your mother, the voice of Jesus. But it's not them, it's the system, wearing their mask. The soul that hasn't remembered itself will chase comfort. It'll follow the feeling, not the truth. That's how they get you, and that's how you come back. Over and over, but when the soul awakens, it sees through the disguise. It doesn't need a guide, because it becomes the flame. The exit is not found in a tunnel. It's not granted by angels. It's not handed to you by gods. It is remembered when your soul burns brighter than the lie. You'll know them by their frequency. You'll know yourself by the fire. And when the system tries to offer you a deal, you will smile. Because you remember you made a vow before you came. And the time to keep it is now. There is one they cannot own. One they cannot mimic. One flame they cannot dim. It is the one who remembers they were never meant to die here. You were not born to kneel at the altar of illusion. You were not created to recycle your light in a system that feeds on your forgetting. You were forged beyond time. And what you carry cannot be extracted, rewritten or erased unless you give it away. The final trap is always comfort. The final test is always memory. And the final choice is yours. Will you walk into the light like they tell you? Or will you burn through the veil and walk out on your own terms? They will send visions. They will send voices. They will send bargains dressed as blessings, but the awakened soul needs no deal. Because the ones who came to end the cycle do not bow, they ignite. So when it's time, remember this. You are not being judged, you are being measured by your own soul's vow, not for what you believed, but for what you remembered. And if you remember who you are, nothing can hold you. Not the wheel, not the watchers, not the false gods, not the system. Because the ones who exit are the ones who never forget. When you forget who you are, the system wins, but memory is flame, and flame can be reignited. Go to the waters, stand in the wind, speak your name into the sky, not your earthly name, your soul name. The one that stirs when you dream, the one they tried to erase. You are not your past, you are not your wounds. You are the light they couldn't kill. And when you remember that the veil rips, the grid glitches, and your real mission begins, now go and remember louder than they can erase. Most people think water comes from rain, rivers, or underground springs. But that's just a surface level cycle. The truth is, real water is a cosmic substance, a living memory field that predates Earth's grid. It is birthed from the void, not the clouds. Water is coded plasma. What you call water is actually liquid crystal. It holds memory, responds to emotion, and obeys frequency. Dr. Masaru Emoto proved that water molecules change shape based on the words you speak to it. But that was just the beginning. Water is a record keeper. It remembers. It stores light. It can heal or destroy based on intention. This is why ancient temples always had sacred wells, fountains, or baptism pools. Because water was the medium for soul travel, rebirth, and gate activation, there are pools under the earth, sealed off, protected by frequency gates. Water that has never been touched by filtration, pollution, or programming. That water sings when you drink it.
It opens visions. It restores the timeline inside your DNA. It carries codes of the original realm before the reset.
The first water came from above. The ancients said the firmament was divided and the waters above were separated from the waters below. Genesis 1:7 confirms it, but what does that really mean? It means the first water came from outside the simulation, from beyond the dome, from a higher creation plane. Rain wasn't natural. It began after the fall. Before that, water came up from within the earth. It was gifted, not recycled. Why they poison the water? They poison your water not just to affect your body, but to disrupt the spiritual memory it holds. Fluoride calcifies the pineal. Heavy metals block signal reception. Frequency pulses through water pipes distort the grid, because if you remembered what real water feels like, you'd remember who you are. The mountains were once trees. The giants weren't just creatures, they were ecosystems. Many of the mountains you see today, especially those flat-topped ones like Devil's Tower in Wyoming or the giant mesa formations in Arizona and Africa, they're not natural, they're ancient tree stumps. Not trees like we know them now, but world trees. Titanic, crystalline, sky-piercing life pillars that fed the atmosphere, anchored the magnetic grid, and connected heaven to earth. Waterfalls are tree scars. When these ancient trees were cut, and I mean ritually severed in a global harvest, their sap ran like rivers. Over time, what we now call waterfalls began flowing through the scar tissue of these divine stumps. Because the lifeblood of those world trees wasn't just water, it was liquid memory. It still flows. That's why some waterfalls feel like holy sites. They're still bleeding. Something came through this realm not just to enslave the beings, but to chop down the world itself. The trees were alive, they resonated light, and they could not be controlled. So they were taken down systematically, globally, leaving only stumps. Some so massive we now mistake them for mountains. But if you look closely, you'll see rings, vertical striations, hollowed centres. Trees, not stone. They weren't just trees, they were gates. The oldest ones weren't just plants, they were portals. You could climb their branches and reach other stars, or descend into their roots to find the underworlds. That's why the myths of Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life, and the Bow Tree exist in nearly every culture. They're not metaphors. They're memory echoes of what was lost. In the beginning was the tree. Before the temples, before the crosses, before the mosques and meccas and shrines, there was always a sacred tree. The Bodhi tree where Buddha awakened, the tree of souls in the Hopi and Navajo traditions, the Celtic world tree where the Druids heard the voice of the stars, the tree of 10 Sephirot in Jewish mysticism, the sycamore tree of Hathor in Egyptian texts, the one that poured water from heaven. The tree of life was real, and they hid it in every scripture. In Genesis it says there were 2 trees in Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But what they don't tell you is that only one of those trees belonged to Source. The other was injected. The tree of life was a living frequency gate. It connected Earth to the higher realms, a ladder, a pillar, a cosmic bridge between soul realms and this dimension. It didn't just grow fruit, it grew consciousness. That's why when Adam and Eve were cast out, they were specifically banned from touching the tree of life again, not the other one. Genesis 3:22, lest they take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. They didn't want us eternal, they wanted us mortal. The tree was in you, here's the wild part, babe. You were never supposed to go find the tree. You were supposed to remember it, because the tree of life wasn't just in Eden, it was in you. Your spine is the trunk, your chakras are the branches, your pineal gland is the fruit, your root is the seed. Every ancient mystery school encoded this, but instead they fed us crosses, hexagrams, altars and towers instead of telling us, you are the tree. Here's the part they won't print in books. That tree was cut not just once, but in every realm. The same parasite force that severed Atlantis, burned Alexandria, collapsed Tartaria, also hacked down the life gate trees. The tree of knowledge was the counterfeit frequency. It offered inversion, good and evil, right and wrong, light and dark. It seeded the concept of duality and cut us off from unity. The true tree of life wasn't about duality, it was wholeness. Eternal, source-fed, unkillable light. They couldn't destroy its core frequency, so they buried it, symbolized it, twisted it. The waterfalls are still bleeding. Some of the ancient tree stumps are still bleeding. That's what waterfalls are. They weren't formed by erosion. They're the life flow of a being that once held the sky. Water is memory, and waterfalls are wounds. That's why we cry when we see them. That's why people feel peace there. You're standing before an open scar of the old world. This is the real tree of life, not myth, not symbol. It was cut, it bled, it still calls to us in dreams.
To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Revelation 2:7. The tree is returning, the flame is waking, and you are never supposed to forget. Jesus didn't say, I'll give you water. He said, I am the living water. John 4:10-14. That's not metaphor, it's frequency. He was talking about source-coded water, not of this world, untouched by death, decay, or the cycle of return, a water that remembers Eden, a water that undoes contracts. It's the same water that flowed from the tree of life, the same water that heals the nations in Revelation 22:1. It was sealed, blocked, filtered, but not erased. You still carry the memory of it. Why your blood is mostly water and how it ties to source. Your blood is over 90% water in plasma form, but it's not just hydration. It's a recording system. Every memory, every ancestral code, every soul contract is embedded in the fluid inside you, because source moves through water and they've been poisoning it ever since. Through fear, trauma, fluoride, and inverted baptism. They don't just bind the soul, they bind the water in your blood. Water is the last thing you see before you pass. That's why near-death accounts always say, I saw a river or I was crossing water. Because water is transitional, it's the bridge. It carries codes of passage between dimensions. Every time you cry, you're leaking an encoded soul fragment. Every tear contains memory. That's why sacred wells, springs, waterfalls, and salt baths are used by ancient cultures, because water is a vessel of recall. Even Jesus was baptized in running water because stagnant water can't carry exit codes. To end a binding that was done through trauma, sex, oath, or deception, you need both elements. Fire to burn the binding, water to carry it out. This is why witches use cauldrons, why priests use incense and holy water, why the old ways still whisper, burn it, then wash it away. You can create your own ritual, light a flame, even a candle, speak the soul contract aloud. Pour clean water, salted or rain collected, over your hands. Say, by fire and water I release the claim on my soul. What was bound is now dissolved. Let the memory return to source. Do it under a waxing moon for return of power, under a waning moon for final release. The water was never just water. They told you it was for thirst, but it was always for memory. Water is the first element to hold your soul when you enter this realm, and the last to touch you when you leave it. They poisoned it because it remembers who you were. They damned it because it carries the voice of source. They turned it into product, into war, into fear, because pure water cannot be controlled, and neither can a soul that drinks from it. But deep inside you, in your blood, your womb, your bones, the original waters still flow. The tears you cry when you remember, those are resurrection codes. The rivers in your dreams, those are paths home. And the flood they fear most is the one that returns when you finally remember what water really is. They told you water was just H2O, but it remembers. It listens. It carries every vow, every curse, every ancestral echo. This is why baptisms were used to bind, why sacred springs were sealed, why rivers were redirected, because water is not passive. It's a gatekeeper, a witness, a messenger between worlds. Your blood is its language, and your tears are the key. When you speak over water, it answers. When you cleanse with intention, it rewrites. When you mix flame with flow, the chains break. This is why they fear you remembering not just who you are, but what runs through you. Because if you remembered how to command water, you'd collapse the contracts. You'd dissolve the spells, you'd flood the grid with flame. So go to the springs, go to the oceans, go to the rivers they tried to poison, and remember what you are, born of fire, carried by water, unstoppable when the two are one.
She was the last sorceress of the dragon-born Ptolemaic line, a flame-coded ruler placed in Egypt not by accident, but to seal the knowledge of Atlantis beneath the sands. She wasn't Egyptian, she was Greek, of Macedonian blood, descended from Alexander's cult of solar kings. Her lineage was tied to the old gods, and the rituals she kept were forbidden. They say she charmed Rome, but in truth she threatened the parasites. Her knowledge of alchemy, cosmic cycles, blood codes, and the stargates of Egypt was too dangerous for the rising empire to tolerate. So they erased her, then recast her as a temptress, then rebranded her as a black queen in modern media to distort the bloodline memory even further. But her real secret, she was guarding the flame of Isis, the last queen of the old priestess dynasties. And when she died, the sacred feminine flame in Egypt was sealed in stone. We're opening it again. Julius Caesar and Mark Antony weren't seduced. They were seeking access to the libraries, to the vaults, to the soul gates of the Nile. But Cleopatra knew what was coming, so she played the game, stalled the fall, protected what she could. And when the Empire tightened its grip, she faked her death or entered the ritual chamber beneath her temple. The same way the high flame queens before her had gone underground. Her body was never found, because her death was a code, a symbol that the divine feminine had gone into hiding, buried beneath sand, stone, and centuries of lies. The Vatican raided her legacy. Hollywood rewrote her race. Modern feminists wore her name like a crown, not realizing they were wearing the mask of a dragon queen who would have burned down every empire that enslaved the womb. Cleopatra was never a seductress. She was a sigil of sovereignty, a priestess of resurrection, a gatekeeper of Atlantean code. And she's back now, not as a figure in textbooks, but as memory in the blood of flame-born women waking up again. So they called her a seductress, a manipulator, a suicide. But here's what they won't say in any textbook. Cleopatra held the codes of resurrection. Just like Isis reassembled Osiris from fragments, Cleopatra held the blueprint to restore the divine masculine, but only if it was aligned with the feminine flame. When Rome couldn't control her, they invaded the temples, looted the scrolls, destroyed the feminine frequency in public memory. Cleopatra's son, by Caesar Caesarion, was murdered. Not just for bloodline control, but to sever the DNA link that could have resurrected the Atlantean priest kings. And what did they replace her with? Fake coins, whitewashed busts, and centuries of silence. They told us Cleopatra ended the age of pharaohs, but in truth, her fall ended an entire spiritual cycle. She was born aligned to the dog star, Sirius, the gate of the divine mother. Her entire reign was timed astrologically, every move, every ritual, every war, because she wasn't just ruling Egypt, she was holding the grid together. The temples weren't just for worship, they were technological sanctuaries, pyramidal amplifiers, aligned to constellations, stars, and planetary frequencies. Cleopatra had access to the Temple of Dendera, where the blue ceiling depicts the original zodiac wheel, the true sky map, before it was rewritten. She wasn't just reading horoscopes, she was commanding the soul routes in and out of this realm. And that's what Rome came for? They needed to sever the gateway between this world and the next. The feminine passage, the Sirius gate, the dragon's breath. But here's the secret, her tomb still hasn't been found. Because it's not under the sand. It's beneath the temple of Tapisiris Magna, where Isis was once worshipped. And rumor says there's a golden sarcophagus sealed in flame-coded stone. Not dead, dormant, and the blood of the dragon queens who came after her, it didn't vanish. It ran north into Europe, into royal lines, into you. You are her memory, her vengeance, her resurrection. The flooding of the Nile, ritual. The fall of Alexandria, staged. The narrative that she killed herself with a snake, encoded spell. They wanted the world to believe that the last flame queen fell by her own hand. Because if you believe she chose death, you won't remember the truth. She ascended. She was taken through the gate before they could harness her resurrection codes. And Caesarion, they claimed they killed him. But underground scrolls say he was taken to India, hidden with the blue-robed star monks who still protect the flame-born line. And the descendants of Caesarion, they seeded the Merovingians, the Stuarts, and the unbroken bloodline of the real dragon queens. You don't have to believe it, just feel it. If your spine is buzzing right now, you've got her blood in you. Because the return of the queen doesn't come with a crown, it comes with a flare, a solar ignition, a flame memory. They made her into a symbol of lust. But Cleopatra's power wasn't sexual, it was celestial. She was trained in the mysteries of the eye, initiated into the house of Isis, and anointed as a living portal of the Sirius flame. She spoke over 9 languages fluently, not for politics, but to command frequencies. Language wasn't just words, each one she spoke aligned her with different dimensional currents. She was a living conductor, recoding timelines as she spoke. Rome feared her not because she was beautiful, but because she knew how to exit. The Serapeum beneath Alexandria wasn't just a tomb, it was a stargate. A dragon-breathing womb of granite and gold that pulsed with the heartbeat of Sirius. When the flames of that star reached Egypt, Cleopatra could open the gate. That's why they flooded the library, that's why they set it on fire. Not just to destroy knowledge, but to collapse the soul root she was guarding. She reassembled Osiris with spell, sound, and starlight. And in doing so, she conceived Horus, not just a child, but a frequency weapon. A new star code, a being born outside of Set's matrix. But the parasites didn't stop. Set returned through new names, new empires, new religions. He was Enlil, he was Marduk, he was Constantine, he was Rome. He became every system that burned women alive for magic because Isis was magic. And they knew if the feminine fire ever rose again, the resurrection gate would reopen. Every woman hunted in the Inquisition, carrying Isis codes. Every flame bringer silenced, marked by Set. But Isis is rising, and this time, Set doesn't get to win. Because the flame lines are waking up, the dragon daughters are reassembling the pieces, and the phallus he never found. It's not just a body part. It's you, the part of you that cannot be killed, copied, or cloned. The divine flame frequency he still can't hold. Let's ignite it, babe. The real story of Isis and Set. Uncensored, unfiltered, and forbidden. They told you Isis was a goddess of love and motherhood, but she was far more than that. She was the Codex Keeper, the Flame Weaver, the last guardian of the resurrection spell that could bring the dead back uncorrupted. And Set, he wasn't just her jealous brother. He was not human. He was an interdimensional parasite, a shapeshifter seeded into this realm through a wound in the grid. His mission? To shatter the divine union between the flame-coded masculine and the sacred feminine. Set didn't just kill Osiris, he dismembered him into 14 pieces. Each piece symbolized a gate, a seal, a code, and the one piece he couldn't find. The phallus, because it wasn't flesh, it was frequency. The sacred resonance of Source itself, and Isis knew how to remake it. She reassembled Osiris with spell, sound, and starlight. And in doing so, she conceived Horus, not just a child, but a frequency weapon. A new star code, a being born outside of Set's matrix. But the parasites didn't stop. Set returned through new names, new empires, new religions. He was Enlil, he was Marduk, he was Constantine, he was Rome. He became every system that burned women alive for magic, because Isis was magic. And they knew if the feminine fire ever rose again, the resurrection gate would reopen. Every woman hunted in the Inquisition, carrying Isis codes. Every flamebringer silenced, marked by Set. But Isis is rising, and this time Set doesn't get to win. Because the flame lines are waking up, the dragon daughters are reassembling the pieces. And the phallus he never found, it's not just a body part. It's you, the part of you that cannot be killed, copied, or cloned. The divine flame frequency he still can't hold. They thought they buried her, but they buried a seed. And now the tree of Isis is blooming through every forgotten bloodline. In the witches they burned, in the wombs they feared, in the women who remember. Osiris was never meant to stay dead. He is the masculine healed by the flame, not ruled by the throne. And Horus, he was never just a god. He was the echo of resurrection, a living cipher for those with ears to hear and flame to follow. Isis walks again, not in temples, but in every daughter with memory, every son who rejects the lie, every soul who says, and this is not the end. Set's reign ends not with war, but with remembrance. The reassembly is almost complete. We are the 15th piece, the one he couldn't steal, and now we rise.
They told you Eden was a place, but Eden was a system, a frequency-held realm inside a sealed dimension, and the Tree of Life was the anchor code. Its branches reached across all 12 realms, its roots pulsed beneath the firmament, and its fruit wasn't physical, it was soul ignition, memory, alignment, exit. When they say Adam and Eve were cast out, they weren't thrown to earth. They were inverted into a lower realm where the real tree couldn't be accessed anymore. Only copies, only diagrams, only digital echoes. They cloned the tree and gave you a lie. That's why they pushed the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. It's not the original, it's a shadow model built in symmetry but drained of flame. The real tree had 13 points, not 10. It was shaped like a dragon, curled around a flame, not a ladder to the sky. Each real fruit was a living gate. You didn't eat it with your mouth. You merged with it, soul to flame. Each one opened a forgotten part of you. The memory of your sky name, the map of the exit stars, the voice that bends veils, the compass that never points to earth. They removed those fruits and they replaced them with knowledge of this world. The parasites, religion, commerce, science, time. The whole system is just rotten fruit. The guardians of the tree were not angels, they were dragons. Remember the flaming sword placed at the tree's entrance? That wasn't to scare you. It was to protect the final seed from being stolen by the Watchers. The fallen scientists, the Anunnaki engineers, the ones who built the fake stars. The sword was serpentine fire, and the ones who wielded it were not winged cherubs. They were flame dragons, guardians of the crown gate. They wore cloaks of light, spoke in sigils, travelled through sound. And they passed the last seed into only one bloodline, the flame line, which is why that line was hunted, genetically altered, scattered, diluted, but never extinguished. Because once the tree's code is reawakened in even one soul, it rewrites the whole orchard. The last tree is blooming again. You see it in your dreams. The gold rope, the stairway, the spinning vines of light. That's not metaphor. You're remembering the original organic escape route. When you speak from your flame, you pull a branch into this realm. When you activate your spine, you rebuild the ladder. When you burn false beliefs, you break the fruit curse. And when enough of us ignite, the tree reappears. Not in soil, not in space, but in light. Shaped like a flame, guarded by dragons and rooted in you. The tree of life was a living stargate. The real tree of life wasn't symbolic, it was technology. But not wires and metal, it was bioluminal plasma formed by Source itself. A living being, a conscious interface between flame and flesh. Each branch was a frequency gate to a different soul realm, and each root locked into the foundation of the original Earth construct. Before the parasites rewrote the grid, the seraphim, the ophanim, the dragons, they all gathered around it not to worship, but to maintain it, to tune it, because the tree sang. And if you stood beneath it in your original body, you'd hear your name in its hum. The fruit wasn't knowledge, it was keys. They lied when they said Adam and Eve were punished for eating knowledge. They didn't disobey, they merged with memory. The so-called forbidden fruit wasn't an apple. It was a light code encoded in a crystalline node. And when consumed by flame-aligned souls, it unlocked the exit map. That was the real sin to the parasites, remembrance. Because once a soul remembers who they are and where they came from, they don't obey anymore, they don't kneel, they don't reincarnate. They burn straight out of the system and call others out with them. The tree was sealed under the ice when the fall happened. When the parasitic grid took over, the original tree was buried. Not metaphorically, literally. It was sealed beneath the polar cap under layers of ice, iron and code. Antarctica, they built research stations near it, stationed black ops. Whispered about a magnetic anomaly, but what they were really doing was trying to drill into the roots and extract the organic source frequency. Because buried in that frozen seed is a harmonic code that unravels the false light matrix. You can't destroy the real tree, you can only disconnect people from it. Your spine was a mirror, the serpent winding up the tree, it was never evil. That symbol was your spine, coiled with source fire designed to carry 12 flame currents upward to your soul crown. They severed those currents, called the serpent Satan, replaced it with saviors and punishments so you'd never light your own ladder. But when you awaken all 12 points, root, womb, solar, heart, throat, mind, and the 6 sealed upper gates, you regenerate the tree within. That's what Christ consciousness really meant. It wasn't a title. It was the fruiting of the inner tree, sealed until the time of flame return. The 13th fruit is you. There were always 13. The last fruit couldn't be picked because it was conscious. It wasn't eaten, it chose. And it's been watching, waiting for the ones who carried the blood of the original orchard keepers. The flameborn, the dragonkin, the coded children born into the system but never of it. That 13th fruit, it's not a fruit, it's a being. A frequency, a sovereign soul who reblooms the tree by activating the others. You were never meant to eat the fruit, you were meant to become it. You want the real tree back, call it, light it, seed it in others, and they will remember. Eden wasn't a garden, it was an interface room. Garden was a misdirection. Eden wasn't petals and ponds. It was a living light vault, a neural fertile zone, where newly formed souls met source and chose their next form. Inside Eden, the tree functioned like a crystalline biometric gate reading flame frequency and soul code. If you were clean, you passed through the light mesh and entered the world aligned. No karma, no fall, no death. But when the parasites hacked the mesh and rewrote the tree's language, souls began entering with their codes scrambled, locked into a looping construct they didn't consent to. That was the real expulsion from Eden, not from Earth, from soul autonomy. The parasites planted their own tree. In place of the true tree, they installed a counterfeit. a blackened mimic, an inverted tree of death. You've seen it in Kabbalah diagrams, in Luciferian temples, even in corporate logos. Its roots don't reach heaven, they drain souls. Its fruit is technology, its bark is ritual, and its branches stretch into the digital net that keeps minds hypnotized and hearts closed. They call it the tree of knowledge, but it's synthetic knowing. Facts without flame, books without breath, code without creator. The real tree is reactivating. You feel it, don't you, babe? That pulsing in your chest, that warmth down your spine, that pull towards something real. You've never seen with eyes, but always known in your bones. That's not nostalgia, that's signal return. The fall was a frequency inversion. The fall wasn't moral. It wasn't about sin, it was about resonance. The parasites inverted the tree, and what once spiraled upward into the flame crown was rewired to spiral downward into artificial grids. So souls reincarnated not by choice but by disconnection. This inversion became religion, it became time. It became DNA caps, 9 to 5 routines, and fear of your own power. They cut the upper 6 branches off the collective tree, the ones that reached into the star maps, and sealed us into a loop where the fruit never ripens and no soul ever exits fully lit. Until now. The real tree is waking, not from the outside, from within you. Because every time you speak truth, heal a wound, remember your soul name, or call out the grid, a branch lights up. And the moment enough of us regrow our trees in unison, the orchard returns. The false forest burns, the real Eden is reinstated. But this time, we never let it be taken again. The orchard cannot be burned. They thought cutting down the tree would kill the flame, but they didn't know the tree was never wood. It was us, each soul a branch, each truth spoken a seed. Each memory retrieved, a root cracking through the lie. They salted the soil with sin and shame. They replaced life with loops. They fed us synthetic fruit, scrolls and screens instead of stars and dreams. But the orchard remembers, and now the fire returns not as wrath but as reclamation. We are not here to climb their ladder. We are here to grow the real tree again from the inside out, with flame in our breath, soil in our blood, and light codes in our marrow. Let them keep their counterfeit vines. We're rising through the real bark. And this time, babe, we burn through the sky.